Good afternoon, members. Welcome to Cabinet on Tuesday, 22nd of June 2021. The time is now just 3 p.m. And welcome to all Cabinet members. We've got a full complement of Cabinet and we've got a few councillors who are here, and we've got a few who are actually going to be asking questions virtually. Item number 2, minutes of previous meetings. Are we okay to move that as a record? Show hands. Thank you very much. Declaration of interest. If any members have got an interest, please complete the relevant form and hand them in to Yolandi after the meeting. And if any members have got an interest who are watching us virtually, please complete the form and email them back. Admission of the public. We have got some public, but they're in a different room, and we'll come on to the item when we come on to deputations and petitions and question time. Item 6, if you've got a deputation and a petition, Yolandi, can I ask you to introduce the deputation petition and then we'll move on from there. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, it's just a petition we've received. Would you like me to read that out?
Yes, please.
Okay. We ask Kirklees Council to allow and support the planting of trees on the council old fields at Longwood Edge. This will help to achieve the Kirklees 2038 carbon neutral vision by sequestering large amounts of carbon dioxide. Kirklees has declared a climate emergency and now is the time to act. Will promote diversity and help sort the alarming loss of wildlife. Populations of the UK's most important wildlife have plummeted by an average of 60% since 1970. Provide natural amenity for Kirklees residents. The area is already a popular spot for walkers and dog owners, with many people visiting the site each day.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson, are you going to respond to that petition?
We don't need to respond to the petition.
Okay, you don't need to respond to the petition. So do we move on to the next item? Right, we'll move on to the next item. Item 6, question by the members of the public. The first question is from Jamie Elliott. Is Jamie going to ask that question? Or is hi, Jamie. Jamie. How many minutes?
15 in total.
Right, we've got 15 minutes in total for this item. So over to you, your question.
Hi, well, I won't need 15 minutes. Will the council consider tree planting on the council-owned fields at Longwood Edge in the Golka and Linley wards? This will support the Kirklees carbon neutral vision and could also create a mix of recreational opportunities, including cycling and walking routes.
Councillor Simpson, do you want to answer that question? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Leader, and thank you very much, Jamie, for your question. It's nice to have you here in person with us, and thank you very much for the petition as well. It's much appreciated. So, as I believe you're aware, the land that you're asking about continues to be on the Council's list for review as a potential site to support the White Rose Forest programme. The review process, which has been led by my colleague, Councillor Paul Davis, is in his portfolio for the corporate asset strategy, involves consulting with all the Council's services, and that review process isn't yet complete. However, it is being undertaken as a priority. While some of the land may support other uses, we do, as you've said, have a clear ambition, supported by us as the Cabinet for tree planting, and we want it to take place here to help support and create the Two Towers vision, which will have a great environmental benefit and be an amenity to enjoy for local residents. Myself and Councillor Davis have been speaking over the last week, as we're both ambitious about tackling the climate emergency and delivering our environmental projects. So I'm pleased that we've been able to agree to remove nearly 1/3 of the site from the review process and today allocate it for planting as part of the White Rose Forest. The area that we're removing from the review process and we'll bring forward is the parcel of land to the east of the site in the area closest to Longwood Tower, adjacent to Balroyd Clough. This amounts to 13 acres of new land for tree planting and for environmental benefit. The remaining area of the site will for now remain in the review and will have to go through that process. However, this of course does not preclude it from planting or environmental projects in the future. This of course remains under consideration pending the review. So thank you very much once again for coming in and for your question, and I'm really looking forward to planning the new woodland in conjunction with local residents and groups. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Will Simpson. Have we got a supplementary, Jamie?
Yes, I do. Well, so thank you very much for your response, and I'm very pleased to hear about 1/3 of the site being allocated for tree planting. So obviously then we're concerned about the remaining 2/3. So will the council commit to making the decision-making process transparent, bringing it out in the open and involving local communities.
Will, over to you.
Thank you, Shabir. Yeah, absolutely. We want our decisions to be open and transparent, and we want to do things with residents rather than to them. I'm looking forward to discussing and bringing those plans forward with you on this 1/3 of the site, and we'll certainly do our best to engage with people going forward for the rest of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more questions, Yolandi?
Yes, we've got questions from Gideon Richards.
Is Gideon here?
Yes.
Where is he?
It's just a slight delay.
All right, he's gonna come on. Okay, whilst we wait for Gideon to arrive, because of social distancing, we've got quite a strict regime we need to follow. People watching out there virtually will note that Councillor Will Simpson was turning around. The reason why that was because that the speaker is behind us. So it's not that he's not looking at the camera, we're just looking at the person who's asking the question. Because although we might be in cabinet in person, there are still people watching who are virtually looking at us. And because of social distancing rules, the way the room is organised means that we have to look at the person who's asking the question, so it gets very, very technical. But please be assured, we are trying our best to try and make this meeting as real as possible, whilst making sure that we actually ensure that the people watching are also taken account of. Have we got Gideon here yet? Are we still waiting? Hi Gideon, welcome. Pleased to see you again. Ready when you are, Gideon. Question, fire away.
Thank you very much. My name's Gideon Richards, and I have a question on item 12 and to some extent item 11, which I know has been consulted on, so I'm not disputing that part of it. While I appreciate the Council's efforts to bring climate change to the forefront of planning, we need meaningful and material contributions when considering climate change. Can you confirm that this planning application climate change guidance, it's a bit of a mouthful, sorry, has not been put out to public consultation as the Town and Country Planning Act requires of supplementary planning documents? Can you also explain why the Act allows this SPD not to require consultation? After all, whatever the title of the document is supplementary to the planning process, is being introduced as part of the planning application process, and is a document which can, under legitimate expectations, be considered a supplementary planning document. So, will the Cabinet pause the approval of this document until, as required, I believe, under the Town and Country Planning Act, it follows the statutory process? Thank you.
Thank you, Gideon. Councillor Peter McBride, over to you.
Sorry, is that better? Yeah. The officers have taken advice and conformed with the government guidelines in terms of guidance in turn that they are giving to us and future applications, the way in which this is going to be processed. So they've abided by the rules and guidelines laid down by the government.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride. Gideon, have you got a supplementary?
Yeah, I've got a supplementary for that one. Given what you've said, and I appreciate what you're saying, and the importance of climate change mitigation and adaptation, then what material and meaningful change is this document expected to deliver over the current planning requirements? What greenhouse gas emissions savings will these contribute to the district-wide target? That's the 2038 target. How will the GHG savings be identified from the applicant against business as usual? And finally on this part, will these actions and savings be included in planning conditions? If so, how will they be monitored and developers required to comply or be challenged if they don't deliver?
Peter, can you answer that, please?
If you look at the response, what this paper provides is the rationale and the means by which we will abide by the government's guidance, and in turn gives guidance to us as a planning authority and to the public the way in which the whole thing will be proceeded. And I am assured that this is one in line with government policy, and that this will be acceptable to the government as a means of progression and dealing with such issues.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride. Is that the end of the questions? Have you got any more? You got another question? Go on, I will allow you another question, Gideon.
Sorry?
I'll allow you another question.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, I appreciate what you're saying, but this was the last part of it was specifically about how the document is going to work, and this particular part of it also continues that. So, have the Cabinet members seen the evaluation process against the document before approving it, and how will the evidence be scored and against what metrics to ensure that the integrity and consistency of the outcomes has been maintained across developers? It will not be good enough, as appeared to happen in Castle Hill, that the planning department can just determine that something passes or fails without the members of planning committee and the public understanding how the determination is made. It needs to be very transparent. How will the forms be verified and validated, and by whom? And what will happen if this document is not submitted in a form that allows the material and meaningful understanding of climate change mitigation and adaptation actions? After all, both the essential and desired efforts are only to be considered by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride.
If you go into the details of the response, they are outlined very clearly, not to give specific responses to given applications, but to provide information to us how the officers in turn will inform themselves in terms of giving guidance to the public and to all concerned. This has been considered properly. I'm quite satisfied that these guidelines will be satisfactory both to us, on the one hand, the region, and in turn to the government. And if they weren't, they wouldn't be, well, it wouldn't be acceptable. I am absolutely assured they will be.
You got a supplementary, Gideon, and that'll bring us nicely up to time, but...
Please, how the evaluation process is going to work, given that it's not been public and transparent, and what metrics are we actually going to use as the planners to measure against?
It's very public and transparent. It's in the papers. The public will be guided from the information given in these papers, the procedure that will be undertaken, in the way in which officers and in turn committees will deal with applications. And we've been through this procedure in great deal of detail. This is a response to the government's guidelines, to the way in which this should be proceeded. And I am satisfied that this will be an adequate process to meet the requirements of the government.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride, and thank you, Gideon and Jamie, who's also attended to ask questions. We'll now move on to item 7, questions by election members. Andrew, you got a question?
Yeah, really, I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay. One of which relates to 12 and 11. And thank you, actually, for the opportunity I had to input onto the climate change guidance. All I really did was seek to get developers to explain what they've done above and beyond building regulations. I think if I hadn't put that in, it would have been, oh, what have you done about energy efficiency? Well, we've complied with Part L of the building regulations. Well, everybody has to. So that would have, without actually asking them what they've done above, that would have been a problem. I guess the question is really, I've heard the response about consultation on both these documents. And I think, yes, there would have been an opportunity, perhaps, if you might not have had to call it consultation, but possibly a period of dialogue. That would have been helpful, I think, to actually have something, a point at which interested parties beyond the council could have come forward. And do we think that there's a role for that, though it may not be formal consultation, that we actually have a period of dialogue with interested parties who may be able to add something above and beyond what we have before us?
In guiding us, the officers abided by a procedure laid down by the government to consult as widely and as well as possible with all concerned. Now, I think whatever system you had, there'd be people who were not terribly happy with the totality of advice provided. I do take your point, but you do realise there is a limit to this. I think officers have gone to great pains to try and involve all directly concerned or who might be affected. And I'm reasonably satisfied that this is sufficient to guide us all.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride. Supplementary, Councillor Cook.
Order that have seen bollards blocking roads in Huddersfield town centre. These complaints have generally been regarding the impact on parking for disabled drivers, a lack of consultation with businesses in particular and local ward councillors, and that some of the bollards have been knocked over and remain unsightly. Will you be responding to these criticisms and actually explaining the benefits of the experimental traffic regulation order to local people?
Thank you. I'm glad you brought this up. There are, as developments are taking place in town, traffic regulation orders are enabling changes in traffic movements, which are, I agree, confusing to all concerned. Not least myself. I come into town every day on a bus and find these difficult. And I take your point. I'm not quite often satisfied with the way in detail it's being dealt with. And I'm constantly in consultation with highways to say what is going on here in the detailed implementation of the modification. I think of two schemes in particular. The one as you're coming from the Civic, coming down and going past Sainsbury's and so on. That arrangement is, well, been difficult to say the least over the last week, and arrangements have not been entirely satisfactory. The way the buses have gone has been very, very confusing, and there's been a similar sort of difficulty at Westgate. These are two that I'm very aware of. I know there are others. I've had complaints. I've talked with officers. But this situation of a constantly changing traffic movement and patterns and approvals and so on of what you can and can't do, it's going to be like this for quite a long time. So we're going to have to get used to adjustments to the patterns that currently operate within the town. And frankly, it will not be very happy. Well, I won't be very happy. I won't be very satisfied seeing what we have to cope with in the short term. And there'll have to be constant adjustment. I do take your point.
Can I bring you in? I've got a couple more questions. I'll bring you back in.
Just wanted really, I think just a comment really that it would be really helpful for cabinet members to be fronting a lot of these schemes, before they go in, because I think people see things happen, but there isn't that, if you like, the political justification from the administration about these things, and so that's what's lacking a little.
One of my problems with this is a regularly changing situation, and I am constantly being updated, perhaps a little ahead of the public, often not very much, and I appreciate it from that point of view, and in turn, as just a normal member of the public, having to deal with this and so on. And I'm not always satisfied with the temporary situation that's being created. So I am quite sympathetic to talk to anybody about, yeah, I will talk to anybody you want me to talk to, but I don't think I'm ever going to give them a totally satisfactory answer. This disruptive pattern, I think, is going to be with us for a very long time as the changes, well, we'll talk about this later, the scale of changes that are going to be undertaken in the centre of this town. I mean, relatively, what's happened so far is minor by comparison with some of the changes that are going to take, and it's going to be over years. So I do take your point. I think we're going to, as councillors, we're going to be inundated with questions of this nature. It's like, what on earth is happening? What's going on? Because it will be a constantly changing situation. What you refer to is relatively minor changes so far, and people are finding difficulties with. And it hasn't been handled, I don't think, terribly well. I don't think it's been handled as I would have been happy with and satisfied with. And I can foresee a situation like this getting worse, and it's going to be difficult from the officer's point of view of putting in a system that will work and at the same time making it totally logical and explaining to the public and members directly affected. I don't take your point, yeah.
I've got two more councillors who are waiting virtually, but seeing whether you asked your second question, I'll give you your supplementary now, Andrew. I'll give you the benefit.
Okay, so really, I mean, I could have come here today and I could have, if you like, put the boot in, as it were, as local towns. Yeah, absolutely. So, but in the best possible manner, I would suggest that if this is going to be the situation going forward, and if you like, it's going to get worse. If that's the case, would you agree with me that we need to find new arrangements which have got more political buy-in and more buy-in within the town centre to actually make sure that these things are, if you like, up front with a lot of the people who are affected, and that we should have, I mean, I've been championing the idea of a partnership board for the town centre, which I look at this and I think, we need broader political buy-in to what's happening in the town centre, and we need, I think, some of the partners that we're working with as well, we need to be involving and having more closer to us. Now, I'll frame it as a question. If not that, then what? Because it's going to get more difficult.
A valid point. You will have a constantly changing situation. And we're going to need arrangements in place to talk directly. And I do accept you are the local ward members for the ward that's going to be most affected. And I think we should consider the methods by which highways do consult, generally with all councillors who represent Huddersfield, and all councillors for that matter. But I agree, specifically, you who represent the town centre, and I'd be happy to increase the amount of discussion with involving you and involving highways. I think at the moment, I'm not entirely happy with what we're doing, you know what I mean?
Thank you, Councillor Cooper, and thank you, Councillor Peter McBride. Actually, it's the first time you've actually said that yes to, it's the first time you said yes to consulting with the Newsman councillors, so that's the step change. So you must have done something there, Councillor Cooper. We've got a question from Councillor Martin Bolt, virtual question. We won't see him on the screen, we'll just hear him. So what do I need to do? What do I do? Just press the button? Oh, he's there. I thought we can... Oh, we won't see it on the webcast. Yeah, so we can see him, but the webcast can't see him. So we can hear you and see you, Martin, but the outside world can only hear you. Over to you.
Well, I'm sure if they can hear me, we're going 50% of the way there. Thank you, Shabir. We just heard about the... Hang on, does that mean Peter can't hear me, or is he just pulling faces?
We can all hear you, Martin. Just speak up a little bit, but you're a bit faint.
Well, it'll be hard work for me to shout from Murfield to Huddersfield, but I'll try.
We can hear you now. We can hear you.
Great. God, isn't technology wonderful? It's like a Tony Hancock sketch. We've just heard there about consultation from Peter. Does Cabinet believe that for a consultation to be meaningful and engage with the audience, you should provide evidence so that those you are consulting can clearly understand what they are being asked to give opinions on.
Peter?
It depends what the issue is. You pose the question in the most generic of terms. Are you suggesting that what people are being asked to opinions on is not adequate? With reference to what? Because they're constantly being asked their opinions.
Councillor Ball, you heard the answer. You've got a supplementary?
Because, yes, please, it was generic because it should apply to all consultations. But to give a specific, Peter, once again, you put material out on roadworks at Cooper Bridge. The material that you're asking people's opinions on gives no clarity. You don't supply traffic data to tell people, wait for it, you don't supply traffic data to tell people what their journey times are assessed at currently and what their journey times will be assessed at when you've spent £70-odd million on it. And the reason why that's important is because when the Liberal Democrats brought forward their gyratory in 2004, it was going to take longer to get through Cooper Bridge after they'd spent £15 million. Then we're spending significantly more money here now. So there's no traffic data. There's no air quality data, which should be something which is embedded throughout this council. David Sheard agreed with that when he was leader, that reports should have air quality information. There's no data on the impact on the B6118, Bog Green Lane, Liley Lane and Bellstring Lane. At resolution, there should be, but officers said they didn't know Cabinet had mandated that 3 years ago. So several things on this major scheme are not present, and yet you're asking the public their opinions on them. All they can give opinions on is a pretty drawing on a piece of paper.
Peter, do you want to respond?
Martin's comment. I agree in terms of what the public, what should we say, can rationally, reasonably be informed about and put opinions forward on, I think is not adequate. However, we have always conformed with government guidelines, what we are required to provide, as do all local authorities. You can go on and on and on talking about the procedures which should be in place to address this issue properly. And at some point, there is just a compromise made between, on the one hand, what you can ask the public about and what kind of time scales, what kind of information is necessary to get, in turn, their opinion. And in my view, always, almost inevitably, it's going to be less than would be perfect to inform and involve even the majority of the population, let alone the total population.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride. We've got a question from Councillor Alison Munro. Alison, are you there?
Hello. Hello, yes.
Hello.
I'd just like to, hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. I'd just like to ask a couple of questions relating to agenda item 14 and agenda item 15. Is it okay to ask those questions now, please?
You can ask your questions now, but are you saying you won't be able to answer them later on? You'd rather you want to answer them? You want to ask your questions now? If you want, you can do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, thank you. I hope you'll be able to answer me now. Okay. Please, can you? First of all, agenda item 14. Please, can you tell me when you're going to review when the blueprint is going to be reviewed?
Alison, just to be clear, are you going to? Is it because you want to go and you, or can't you wait and you want to answer the question? Yeah, I think that'll. Yeah, so we'll. Yeah. So, have you got any other questions? So we'll bring that question then. Yeah. I don't want to eat into member question time. You see. So, have you got any other general question, Alison?
Yeah.
No, we'll take that. We'll take that question on agenda item 15. Have you got any other general question you want to ask now, Alison? No. Okay. Have we got any more questions from members? I think we've got a few minutes left.
Yes, please.
Yes, Martin.
Thank you. Should all those granted planning permission comply with the conditions and adhere to the plans which were approved for those planning applications?
Peter?
I would presume so. I'm not sure what your question means, to be honest, man.
Do you want to rephrase your question, Councillor Ball?
Yes, thank you. Why doesn't Kirklees Council conform to the planning permissions it gets granted? Why doesn't Kirklees Council adhere to planning conditions in terms of updates and monitoring? And why doesn't Kirklees Planning Enforcement take action when these things are pointed out and the evidence given to them? And indeed, things have been given to the ward members for the Dalton area as well.
As far as they do.
So, I don't know if you heard that, no. Martin, but we do.
I'll repeat it. As far as I'm aware, they do. And they're certainly going to enormous pains. You were referring to one specific thing. I do know the office went to enormous pains to give you information on that.
Information is not compliance with planning. They have not conformed with the approved planning documents, as you well know.
It is alleged.
Developers to adhere to planning when Kirklees Council flout their responsibilities.
Councillor Ball, Peter gave you a very clear answer that we do, and if you want to go into a debate as such, I would suggest we go offline on that, because I don't want to criticise officers unduly right here without any evidence. And even then, if there was evidence, it's not the right place to make that criticism. Have you got any other questions, anybody?
Yes, please.
Yes, Martin?
Councillor Buck, can you unmute your microphone, please? Thank you.
I didn't mute it, so the powers that be, thank you. When we are talking about council policy, shouldn't they be equal, transparent and apply across everything? So that when there is a building in Murfield, which was a council building with a buyback clause on it, Kirklees declined to exercise the buyback clause on the former council officers because staff said there was no clear business plan and approved use in place. How many millions of pounds has this cabinet spent in Huddersfield and Dewsbury with no such publicly available business plans?
Martin, I'll answer that. As you know, the government is very, very clear in terms of their industrial strategy and their regeneration strategy and their employment skills, and the list goes on. And through that, we've got to make sure that we hit the right case to put a business case forward for areas like Murfield, Holmfirth, Batley, Dewsbury, Heckman White, Birstall, Birkenshaw, Cleckheaton, I can go on. And it's only when we actually make sure that we actually join it all together that we'll actually start to address them issues at a locality level. But I'm really, really proud that this council does meet the national criteria which are set by your government, also to make sure that we set the criteria that is set up by LEP, which has been set up by your government, and also the Combined Authority, which was something that we fully backed, and now the Mayoral Combined Authority has got a strategic framework. We will do everything in our power to continue to work with that. We are already doing that, and as you know, the business case that we are developing for the Penistone line, which is not in Huddersfield and not in Dewsbury, and on a cross-party basis, working together with the government, working together with the MPs, working together with the councillors on a cross-party basis. It does not serve anybody any purpose, Martin, especially you, besides actually flying a flag for 5 minutes to actually come and actually make them points. If you want to work with us effectively, please do so. By being popular doesn't mean to say that you're going to deliver for your residents in Murfield. Far from it, Martin.
Nothing of that related to what was said. It was about business cases for property purchases. That doesn't relate to transport schemes or anything. What you're saying is the government guidance allows you to buy property without a business case, in which case you could have bought back the council offices.
Martin, let me make it very, very clear. This council will not do anything if it's not going to serve the purpose of A, the taxpayer, B, it doesn't stack up, C, if it's ultra vires, and D, right, yeah, if we can't do it because it's against the law. You know, you are insinuating things, Martin, and if you carry on going down the line of questioning, Martin, I will mute you, and that is not a threat, because what it is, right, is we need to actually make sure that we uphold some standards. I don't mind playing politics, but what you're accusing this council of, what you're accusing the members of the council of, including yourself, that we are actually doing backhand deals, which we will never do. So I don't want to carry this debate on. If you want to carry this debate on, I want to mute you. If you've got any more questions that are sensible, I will take them.
Certainly, should transport schemes conform with latest guidance such as LTN 120 on active travel?
Which, Peter, do you want to answer that? LTN?
Yes.
Yep.
So
Yes, they do. Yeah, supplementary, yeah.
Why don't they then?
As far as I'm aware, they do. This is...
They don't.
Martin, this is your last chance. If you don't ask me a proper question, I'm going to mute you. So, have you got any more questions?
No, ladies, can't answer what's asked.
Right. Thank you, Martin. Okay, thank you, members, for attending and asking the questions. We'll move on now to item 8, which is appointment of cabinet and portfolio holder. This is something that we've got to do under the council's constitution. I'll just go through the list for formal purposes. Obviously, I am the leader of the council. My deputy is Councillor Cassie Scott. She's the deputy leader and leads on housing democracy. Councillor Carol Patterson leads on learning, aspiration and communities. Councillor Peter McBride leads on regeneration. Councillor Viv Kendrick, she's our statutory lead for children services. Councillor Naheed Mather is the portfolio holder for the environment. Councillor Will Simpson, our newest recruit, and I think the youngest member is on the council, is Culture and Greener Kirklees. Councillor Muzrat Khan, who is Health and Social Care, and also our statutory lead for Adult Social Care. Councillor Paul Davies, who is our new cabinet member, welcome once again, leads on corporate. And finally, Councillor Eric Firth, welcome Eric, formally again, leads on town centres. Anybody, any queries or questions on that? This is just for information, actually. Okay, we'll move on to item 9. 2020 Kirklees Annual Education Quality and Standards Report. Councillor Carol Patterson, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, this report, as you just said, is entitled the Kirklees Annual Education Quality Standards Report 2020. This would normally be the annual report of the outcome for all our students in all Kirklees schools of results of exams and assessments that have been made during that year. Obviously, for this past year, academic year that is, due to COVID-19, there's been little formal assessment or examination data to be able to report. And schools have been providing remote education to the majority of its pupils for all of, well, since March 2019. Nevertheless, we've brought this report here today because it's important to recognise everything that both our schools, the staff, the teachers, and the students themselves have been doing to maintain their attainment and still achieve during that time. And there is a lot of positive activity to highlight. In particular, I have to commend schools for all the work that they have done in responding to the pandemic and setting up the systems and the remote learning that they've needed to do so. Probably directly or indirectly how COVID has impacted all our schools and their students. And as I say, it's important to recognise the achievements that they have been able to make during this last year. And we want to maintain some sort of consistency between the year before that and the year that will come after this year, because obviously, again, this year, current academic year, there will be no formal, well, there'll be a formal assessment, but it won't be the same as normal exam results, etc. And we haven't this year done the Key Stage 2 SATs, etc., that we would normally have. But it's important that we do, as I say, recognise what schools and their students are doing. So that's what this report contains. It contains in the appendices what data we have got, either that which is being provided just nationally or the data that we have been able to glean locally from what assessment did take place last year. Obviously, there were no Key Stage 2 tests as they were cancelled, and the DFE last year did not collect the outcome of 2020, so they're not publicly available in the same way as they normally are done. Though, of course, now they've changed their mind, as has been so often during this pandemic, and we are, for this current year, expected to provide some sort of assessment, a formal assessment. I should actually point out it's very confusing, everything that we've been through with COVID, and this report actually does get some of its dates mixed up. In a couple of places it does say 2020, when it should say 2019, which is why I'm stumbling a bit over last year, this year, next year, the data that's available. So the data that we've got from 2019, the data we have got from 2020, the data we will have from 21, and then the data that we will have again from 22 are not comparable, but we still need to collect it. And I have to, we can still recognise, I should say, the pressures and the difficulties that our schools have been working under, that there has been a continued rapid growth in pupils, number of pupils with high needs. There still continues to be a reduction in school funding and significant cuts to the council's dedicated education funding from the government. And, of course, particularly during this pandemic, a significant rise in the number of children eligible for free school meals. But again, I say we have to congratulate how the schools have responded to the pandemic and have worked together in partnership. I mean, there have been some positives that have come out of this. The way the schools have worked together in partnership, how they've worked together across the sectors and across between our maintained schools, our voluntary aided schools and our academies as well. So that's working closely as a family of schools has been one of the real outcomes, positive outcomes of the pandemic. And then again, schools have all had to work with public health and the education service as well to maintain the challenge of that the pandemic has given to them. I won't go into the detail that we have got here in the appendices. It is there. The progress of children is still being assessed by their teachers, and we still have, I think, the pattern that we've had from previous years, which may sound slightly odd, but does show how well our schools are delivering our education in Kirklees. Our children are, at the moment, still underperforming slightly at Key Stage 1 and 2, and then they begin to catch up at Key Stage 4 in terms of results, and then at Key Stage 5, their results are absolutely exceptional. So by the time our children have reached sixth form or colleges, they are exceeding well above average, and that has to be down to the exceptional teaching and schools, I think, that we have got in Kirklees. So we've seen that. That's what's happened in previous years. It's happened through the last year, and that's what we expect to see as a pattern, as a theme through this year that we have faced at the moment. As I say, I'm not going to go through the detail that there's here in the appendices, but what data we have is here and it will be used in future years to maintain that consistency that we need to ensure that we continue to make good outcomes for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Very comprehensive report, and quite good to hear that progress is being made at a good pace. Viv, are you seconding that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll second it.
Councillor Cooper, who's indicating to talk. Councillor Cooper.
So I'm a school governor at Mount Pleasant in Lockwood, and one of the issues that they've brought up is about the funding issues that they've got due to falling pupil numbers, and part of that they perceive is about the new schools that are being built nearby. And this is a story which I've heard has been going around in other places where there is a perception that the councils had poor planning in terms of the provision of new schools and the not really understood the impact that would have on the budgets of the adjacent schools. Is that something that you recognise?
I certainly recognise that there is a falling number of primary school pupils right across Kirklees. I mean, it's a national, local trend. But certainly, I don't recognise the lack of planning when it came to the new schools. We've only actually built, I think, we've built 2 and 1 is in progress. And they have been built as a result of the pressure on school places in those particular areas that we did see and we will continue to see, particularly in North Kirklees. There's a pressure on school places there, and there is expected to be some sort of movement in terms of, and it'll come slowly perhaps, of pupils to these new schools, which relieves the pressure that there are on the over-subscribed schools that we have got at the moment. We've still got over-subscribed schools in certain areas, and it's just something, it's about rejiggling to a certain extent the pupil places. But we have to do that, of course, in line with parental preference. We can't force kids to go to the new schools where they or any other school for that matter. But there's been plenty of planning gone into the provision of those new schools.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Any supplementary?
Yeah, it's just really that I've talked to the chair of governors at Mount Pleasant, and he's an experienced teacher. He's been around a long time. He's been a head of a school. He's a head of another primary school elsewhere. He basically there's a funding crisis coming very, very quickly as a result of the over provision, if you like, of primary school places. Now I appreciate it's a balancing act, but that's going to have a direct impact on the teaching provision that's going to be in those schools. So it's not necessarily relieving numbers as such, but relieving them of budget, and so that's a perception which certainly exists at Mount Pleasant, and I wonder if it exists elsewhere.
I wouldn't say that it is repeated elsewhere. No, it is a balancing act, and many schools are having to rebalance their books at the moment because of falling numbers. And it is difficult, but it isn't the provision of the new schools. I mean, the other aspect of the new schools, of course, is that we've actually got some very good new purpose-built, fit-for-purpose 21st century schools because we have got in Kirklees a lot of old inappropriate schools as well. And Mount Pleasant has to say, it's not a new school entirely, but of course it has actually benefited from that refurbishment of the school. So, but no, it's it isn't something I would generally recognise. So the problem of falling numbers is a problem that many schools do have to face at the moment.
Thank you. Any more? Have we got anybody? No? Okay, I think one of the things that was highlighted in the report when you were talking to the report was when our young people come out at Key Stage 5, post-16, they're actually quite well equipped. And really that's really where I want to just focus on, which is probably beyond the remit of this report, but the adult education, the post-16, which is now probably falling into the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, the whole wad of money that's coming from national government, we need to make sure that that continuum is actually there in terms of making sure that we actually excel beyond what we need to. And we just need to keep an eye on that in terms of that Combined Authority offer of that education post-16. Because, as you know, some authorities aren't in the same space as us, some authorities are better. We need to make sure that we aspire to the better side, and that's something that we'll keep an eye on. But it's good to hear that, you know, the evidence is there. It's generational, and we can inspire to actually become even better. So on that note, are we okay to, unless somebody else wants to make any comments, are we okay to just nod the hand? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 10, Kirklees Active Travel Fund Tranche 2. Which councillors, Councillor Peter McBride,
yep.
Do you want to introduce this, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is the outcome of the bid by West Yorkshire on the Government's Active Travel Fund, of which the Kirklees part. We were allocated 2 million of the 10 million that in all West Yorkshire was allocated. They'll be used for 3 schemes, mainly the Huddersfield Narrow Canal, which will be implemented by the Canal and River Trust, improvements to the Spen Valley Greenway, and Dewsbury Station an access project. All we're saying at this stage is this will be so, the details will be forthcoming and they will be presented to the Cabinet later.
Nahid, are you seconding this report?
Yes, I'd like to second this report. It outlines our ambitions, its strategic infrastructure. It's built on partnerships and has the climate emergency at the heart of the projects it's trying to deliver. The only issue here is the very tight timelines. But other than that, it provides the best programmes and has substantial benefits for our district. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Martin Bull, who's indicating to speak. I'll bring you in, Martin. Is he on now?
Thank you. I welcome, obviously, any report on active travel, but as we've heard earlier, the devil is often with the detail of this. I notice in the reports there's a lot of delegation to officers. Will reports come back to Cabinet so that Cabinet members and the users actually see what's being delivered? The issue with Canal and Rivers Trust is often they take control of the project and they therefore dictate surfacing and other issues, and that's key if you're trying to get people to commute all year round, is the surface, and the long-term maintenance of these routes is key. So I'd like to see some information on that, and also on a shared use path such as the Huddersfield Narrow, how does the scheme comply with national standards for shared use widths? It's a very busy corridor, is that it's the only sort of the principal non-road corridor for active travel, and if we want it to be as successful as we have for other schemes such as the Spen Valley Greenway, we need to make sure that it can cope with the volume of traffic. I welcome the links that is being talked about for the Spen Valley Greenway. As the report sets out, this is creating a link between the Greenway and the newly refurbished. I mean, it's actually the rebuilt Spen Valley Leisure Centre. And one could have argued that those links should have been provided as part of the planning permission for a development. They would have been with a commercial developer. It doesn't say within the report, again, it doesn't detail what surfacing we're getting, and it doesn't detail too much about the alignment of that, which option has been favoured for creation of the Heckman White Ringway to the Spen Valley Greenway link. Again, that would be useful to know. And I look forward to Cabinet coming forward with a strategy for delivering more active travel projects, because obviously 3 years ago there was a glaring omission in the Greenway network was identified nationally by Sustrans in the Murfield ward. The Calder Valley Greenway does not complete its route through Murfield, and I look forward to seeing a strategy for how these links in our Greenway networks will be brought in. So what are the surfacing types going to be for each of these? What are the alignments for the Spen Valley link, and what are the plans for maintenance of these routes? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. If you read the report, Martin, there is no detail in there. It's very consciously no detail. These are 3 schemes that will be worked up and presented to us, and it tells you where they will be. It doesn't give you any great details of them, because this is our bid and part of the money that we've obtained from this overall funding. So at this stage, we've got to know the information we need. We will be updated on this and given more detail. I take your point, but it wouldn't be adequate and necessary at this stage to have them all worked up. We've only just learned we've got the money. To have it all worked up and not be funded would be ridiculous.
Do you want a supplementary, Martin?
No,
okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Will Simpson, who's indicated. Will, over to you.
Thanks, Shabir. I just thought it might be helpful to come back on something you said, Martin, because you mentioned the active travel strategy. As Peter said, this is just the beginning of a structured programme for active travel interventions and developing a strategic network for us in terms of cycling and walking. We are still on course to deliver a complete and new, robust active travel strategy in 2021, so I hope we'll be obviously bringing that back when it's complete. And I thought it'd be of interest for you that officers are intending to reinvigorate the Kirklees Cycling and Walking Delivery Group, which should include an opportunity for one active travel champion from each party to attend and contribute. So I'm sure you'll take interest.
Thank you, Councillor Will Simpson, very informative. I've got nobody else indicating, so what we'll do is we will... oh, sorry, Councillor Viv Kendrick, I can just see you there waving away. Sorry, Viv.
Thank you, Chair. Really adding on from Martin Bolt's comment, the ringway that is in the ownership of Sustrans does run from Heckman White to the site of the new leisure centre. It is on the other side of Bradford Road, and I would love some thought to be given as to how people can use that from Heckman White as sustainable travel. And also it runs to Royds Park, where our intention is to build a new skate park, which is also significant. So people on the Greenway at the other side of Bradford Road may also wish to access that. So I would like some thought that Heckman White was indicated in this report in the future, and that some thought is given as to how those are linked up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Yeah, we'll, do you want to respond, Peter?
Just a very quick one. As I said a couple of times previously, the details of these schemes are not worked up. As they are being, there's every opportunity for members to be involved in any one of these programmes.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And that's the point I was going to make. Do you want to come back, Viv?
Just to say, when you read this report, and I absolutely accept the detail isn't in there, but the one thing missing is the town of Heckman White as a ward that's affected by it, and I just want, on behalf of people of Heckman White, to make sure that their needs and views are included. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's what Peter meant, that there's a lot of detail to go through in terms of this is just a bid in terms of moving it forward, but we will take everything into account, including the Heckman White Town Centre. and the wide issues that Councillor Bolt mentioned. So, are we okay to move this report? I've got a show of hands. That we don't need to go through a roll call, do we? Like we did virtually. It'll take forever. Right, thank you, members. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 11, quality places, supplementary planning documents and biodiversity net gain technical advice note. Councillor Peter McBride again.
Guidance. Sorry, it is on. It was. I'm sorry, I've lost my trend. Yeah, it replaces the current guidance, and we're just updated with what that would be. Mainly, but it will focus on design, house extensions, open space, and biodiversity. And these are just guidelines that we will have to abide by, and which in turn will require others to abide by.
Nahida, you?
Yeah, I'd like to second this report. I think it's a very helpful document, which clearly states what's expected in relation to our standards and what we expect the developers to take on board. And, the members of the public before were focusing on climate change. Climate change is at the heart of everything we do, and these set of reports actually demonstrate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Andrew Cooper wishing to speak. Okay, Andrew, over to you.
So I think the important thing here, there's a lot of work gone into the report, clearly. But how do we actually measure its impact? So what I'd like to suggest is that a year hence, that some time's put in to measure the impact of this document, see the difference it's made. What tangibly can we see that's happened as a result of it, which wouldn't have happened otherwise? So I'd like to suggest that to Cabinet as to add that to your recommendations to look 1 year hence to see the difference that this document has made, and to ask for a report to show that.
I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation. We could comply with that.
Yeah. Point taken, Andrew.
Right.
Okay.
So is that added to your recommendations?
Yeah, we can add that to the recommendations. Yes, we can. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else that wants to make any comments? So, just put your hands up. We all agreed to that. With that added recommendation, that we'll have an impact assessment done, which I think is the right thing to do, especially the kind of climate stuff that's going around. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is item 12, planning applications, climate change guidance.
That we are requiring other people to conform with, how we will inform ourselves, the criteria which we will use, and thus the current procedures were inadequate, and they are now being brought up to a standard that we will have to conform with, the details of which are in the papers. It gives clarity to developers, to members, and all interested parties. So I think it's very helpful to all concerned, and I recommend this to the council.
Thank you.
I should have added. Sorry. Councillor Cooper made a contribution to this in the guidelines that we will apply and operate, and we accepted the suggestions that he put forward, and it was very helpful.
Very full. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Councillor Cooper, for, I'll bring you in a minute, but for that acknowledgement that Peter made, just making sure that we capture that as well. Councillor Will Simpson, do you want to second this?
Yeah, absolutely second it. Obviously, since I've taken up my role, I've taken an interest and spoken about this. I've been spoken to Councillor Cooper about it, as well as the officers, and officers have assured me this is as far as we can go at the moment in time with the government's current planning framework that we have. Obviously, that might change with the disastrous reforms that the government are suggesting, which I think everyone in this room and every party apart from the local Conservatives are opposed to. We will absolutely continue to push the climate change agenda wherever we can, particularly when it comes to developers, and making sure that they comply as best as possible. So yeah, second it, Leader. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew Cooper, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, so, and thank you for the opportunity to put my input into the document. Principally, I wanted developers to actually say if they were doing nothing beyond building regulations, and that's my, if anything, it might embarrass developers, if that's the possible, for them to say, oh no, we've just done building regulations and nothing else. You know, but it would be good to actually have that being clear, at least. So my request is the same as the last document, is can we have an impact assessment 1 year hence on the impact of this document?
I'm happy to discuss this with Office and see whether or not we can accommodate that request.
Can we just not agree it here? Okay.
Yeah, but I suspect that when you fed in, that was part of the stuff. No, Andrew. But anyway, yeah, we'll definitely, because see, the way I look at it is the more I don't pretend to be a climate expert, but the more I'm looking at stuff, and the more I'm seeing documentaries, and the more I'm seeing how the planet is deteriorating and how things are moving forward. We do really need to actually, not just us as a council, but everybody needs to get a grip of this, because otherwise it's going to be too late. So I think anything we can do to track that change, and I think that's what we mean by an impact assessment, is going to be good, because you know things are moving very, very fast. So you know that's my personal take. Peter?
Chair, I am worried. I'm not speaking for developers, that we have put in place too many impediments to development. Believe me, there are planning procedures all over the country, particularly to hold back schemes, and there is a danger that some of these procedures are taken to excess, and which will stop development taking place. It's always the case, striking a sensible, reasonable balance. That's why we're always, reserved about what we're going to put in place.
Yeah, no, I completely get that, what you're saying. So what we'll do is we agree with the spirit of what Councillor Cooper is saying, but we need to have a balanced approach in terms of, at the same time, we don't want to curtail development, because at the same time, and I'm sure Cassie can tell us that our waiting lists and our homelessness figures are going through the roof. But so it's a fine balance, but it is a very complex area. But I think we also need to just understand that, you know, if we've got no planet, there won't be no homes, and if we've got no homes, there won't be no people, right? Yeah, you know, and then inevitably we'll be extinct as a race, human race. But anyway, I don't want to get too sentimental. We know what you're saying, Andrew. Councillor Scott, Cathy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it's right, the conversation that we're having now, because things are moving at pace. It actually tells you in the document it was a reason to ensure that the council is on up-to-date, accurate guidance. So it's constantly moving, so we need to be abreast of it as some key members. You know, we're representing, there's planning committees, things are changing, and I don't see there being anything wrong with being given an up-to-date, you know, kept abreast about what's going on. So I actually think, year's time, you know, just bring us an update on what's happening. At least, you know, people know. So as policy changes, we do get the updates, but I just think that all members should be updated.
Yeah, so I think generally we agree. What we're agreeing is that we need to keep an update on things that are progressing on this agenda. Are we okay to move on? Can I have a show of hands? Thank you very much, members. Item 13. Huddersfield Station Gateway and Trinity Street access. Councillor Peter McBride again.
Yep. Station Gateway and Trinity Street access. This is one of 6 areas to be regenerated in the town centre, all of which are part of the Huddersfield Blueprint. What we propose needs to operate within the timescales and funding programmes that are being referred to in the documents. For this bid, for money from Transforming Cities programme, we put forward an ambitious programme, summarised in Table 2, which involved detailed usage of St George's Warehouse, etc. Now, I think we're all aware of the fact that we've not progressed the speed we would like. We've not got the degree of control to implement, and therefore the ambitions there are not going to be reflected in the proposal put forward. So, again, the devil being in the detail, what we would aspire to and what we can do within the framework of programmes that the government make available means that we've got to adjust and adapt and use opportunities to progress what schemes we can. So that original proposal, which is referred to in the papers, is withdrawn, and the further one that was put forward was a more modest scheme of 7.5 million. It's for cycling and walking, and it's outlined in Table 3. It merely refers to St John's Road, John Williams Street, and Northumberland Street. So these have been put forward. So essentially, the paper is about a reprofiling of our bid, and it's, as I say, a more modest one because we couldn't fit the original programme within the timescales and the funding packages. So this is something to be going on with within our programme.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride. Councillor Naheed Mather.
Thank you, Leader. Once again, ambitious programmes which are comprehensive in order to connect and put in place strategic infrastructure. I agree with Councillor McBride that they are modest and we do have to reprofile. We tend to forget that we've had for a year and a half, we've been in a pandemic. There are all sorts of issues with supply chains. There are deadlines with various sources of funding, but we are keeping to our ambitions within the blueprint. We are also making sure that active travel is at the heart of everything we do. So as somebody in questioning earlier said, there's going to be a lot of pain, short-term pain for long-term gain, because it is going to look like a building site whilst you're putting together these infrastructure schemes of widening footpaths, sharing and connecting and using intelligent traffic light systems. So I'm very, very enthused and can't wait for it to happen. And I know that regardless of how much ever communications you do, it will always lag behind. And what we need to, in fact, ask our residents and our visitors and ourselves is to be patient, to come on this journey with us, to see the transformation which takes Huddersfield blueprint to a reality, which makes us fit for the future. And, you know, all I can say is we're going for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Anybody? Councillor Cooper?
So, yeah, obviously, welcome improvements to the town centre, and there's some interesting proposals here. Some thoughts. There is mention of electric vehicle charging points in the proposal, but no real idea about how many or what the scale of that might be. Now, my view would be that it should be quite high, actually, that maybe we should be looking at 100% of parking spaces that are going to be here should be for capable of charging electric vehicles. Quite apart from anything else, it would be a revenue stream going forward, and a revenue stream is quite useful. Who knows, we might see the end of petrol stations in 20 years, and so maybe the council could be the council's car park could be the petrol stations of the future for electric vehicles without the petrol, obviously. So let's actually have a look at this and think, what is our ambition? What is it we're actually trying to do? Is it putting in, we've put 10 electric charging points in? No, that's not what the approach we ought to be looking at. We ought to be looking with much greater ambition than something of that nature. The other aspect is the cycling aspects, and of course welcome the active travel things, but there's a need for this to be part of a wider strategy. We have too many cycleways and cycle points which stop all of a sudden, and then we don't, where do you go from there onwards, where they're actually stuck and having to go out onto dangerous roads. And safety of cyclists has got to be part of a wider plan and a wider vision. So good to see that, but what's the biggest story? The other one is we've got to have a new entrance to Huddersfield Station. The first one that's been there for getting on for 150 years, is it? Something of that sort of nature. And so that's a huge change in lots of ways. And that puts, and if you look at the first entrance to Huddersfield Station, it is iconic. It's been voted by Twitter followers, the most informed group of people in the country, has been the best station in the whole of the country, station frontage. So I think that puts a responsibility on us to actually ensure that the second entrance to the station is of at least as good an order as that, and that we actually have a design competition to actually look at and make sure that this new entrance is iconic in a 21st century way. As the exterior of the station is iconic in a 19th century way. So let's see that. And I guess St George's Warehouse, I'd be interested to see how we're actually integrating with their vision going forward. Is our vision their vision? And I say our vision, I'd like this to be part of a whole council approach as opposed to just an administration approach, because we are being asked, the wider council, to buy into the blueprint going forward. But our involvement is in what that vision is not as clear.
Councillor Naheed Mather.
Andrew, this is really very difficult because it's a watch this space kind of moment, and it's a changing landscape. So, for example, when you talked about EVs, we're not just thinking about how many PowerPoints can we have in partnership with other landlords. Looking into the future, what do the petrol stations look like? In terms of planning new housing estates, having EVs, home charging. We're also, I was somewhat surprised to find out, I was talking about the numbers of EVs we had, and I was told where in relation to the household income, whether we've got enough people who will be driving, and how long will they be, will we get to the point where they can drive electric vehicles? And I was told the most used EV points were in Batley. So, you know, you can never tell where the penny is going to drop. So it's something that we're changing, something we're not saying this is fixed, something that's moving all of the time and meeting the needs and the funding streams, because despite wanting to be the best and do the best for our residents, it all depends on how much funding we have and how much we can bring together by working in partnership with the private sector. So please work with us, and I am sure we're going to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, do you want to say anything?
I don't disagree with the comments that have been made, but this is a paper about the Transforming Cities Fund. What we're doing with this and with other schemes is to match our parts of our ambitions to funding opportunities. And this is what we are doing here. So, yeah, we have wider opportunities. There's no point in relating them to something that would never fit the programme. What we've had to do is get something that will fit the programme and is likely to be funded. We will be doing this again and again in order to bring forward money from central government wherever the opportunity occurs. And if it's for regional funds or national funds, we will make the bids. And in fact, we are presuming there will be other resources coming from this sort. But it doesn't mean, because we focus on getting what we can to a given scheme, that we don't have ambitions for the rest. Of course we do. And as we come on to the next item, which is the cultural heart, again, you can see the scale of what we're... well, I'll defer comments till we actually get there.
Thank you. Is anybody else? No. Okay, any more comments, questions? No? So on that note, are we okay to approve this report? Thank you, members. Item 14.
Cultural heart.
Just before I go on to item 14, can I take it that all members have read the private item 17, on page 569 onwards? Yep. Yes? So we're okay to make a decision on this based on that. Okay, item 14, Councillor Peter McBride.
Cultural heart, this gives even more detail of the wider programme, but the back over here, the Piazza area. We're talking in total of about £175 million programme, which will be funded from various different sources. A lot of it will be the council's money. A lot of it will be money that might be forthcoming to the council on particularly highway schemes or adaptations of schemes which we can apply to this funding. Funding for widening and improving town centre, etc. Where the opportunity occurs, we will seize it. You can see from this programme what we intend to do. What I'm trying to create a proper impression. It might appear, oh, we don't know exactly where everything's going. There's some truth in that, because we're trying to fit together a very complex programme, which will be a new library, which will be a new art facility, a music facility, a range of other activities, and all the buildings which are in this area. Fitting that together is not easy. And you're talking about a very, very expensive scheme. So to get it right will require a lot of time, effort, and so on. And I've constantly said, and I'm very pleased we're now adhering to it, is get experts in who will guide us effectively when you state in detail your ambitions, to put them in a position to guide us effectively how best to achieve this ambition. And this is the stage we're at. We're going out to these, to the company that we're going to engage to get guidance to be able to do this as effectively as we possibly can. I think in broad terms, we all know what we want. The detail of what goes where, etc., I think that is becoming clearer as we move forward. But it is obviously the case. You've got a moving programme of a big one to be implemented overall, a detailed one which will be putting together bits of the total piece, ensuring that those bits fit with the rest, and doing it all within a programme in a timescale that is reasonable. I think in total it'll be about 10 years, but you can see from this paper where we are fairly clearly going in the next 5 to 7 years. But we will, the situation will clarify still further as this company provides that help. And we will therefore confine with what's known as the government's green book, the way we progress this, the way we assess bits of it in terms of detailed programmes of how it will be commissioned, how it will be taken through its various stages to implementation, using a procedure which is widely used in West Yorkshire, the region, and in fact nationally.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride. I'm sure you'll want to come back in at the end. Councillor Paul Davis.
Yep, certainly. I think we've talked about this a number of times, and this is hugely exciting. We keep using the word ambitious. We can't use that word enough, really. This particular initiative is crucial to the future of Kirklees, and not just Huddersfield. It isn't just something which will have an impact within the town centre. It'll have a much wider impact and reverberate right across our authority. As Peter has explained, David Shepherd has proposed bringing in a team of people to help us establish a vision and a strategy which is, as much as possible, is future-proofed. You know, for something this size, we need to be ensuring that we've got something which is flexible and agile to meet our needs going forward. I think the other thing that's very clear, and already we start to see signs of this, is such an initiative gives huge confidence to the private sector, and that pays dividends in terms of inward investment. So certainly second this and back up this recommendation. Hugely impressed with the work that David Shepherd and his team are doing, and have a huge amount of confidence in their approach, which is about delivering an initiative which meets the needs of our citizens and our businesses for quite some time to come.
Councillor Cooper, Andrew.
I don't want to really sound like a stuck record here, but there is actually a need. Well, there is a need, I think, for wider involvement beyond the cabinet in this. We are being asked in the wider council to be backing this project going forward over the coming years. Who knows what the political changes might be on this council going forward? And I think it would be a strength of the administration to establish a partnership board which would include members of all political groups and also some of the key stakeholders like the civic society, like HD1, like the university, these sort of people in the decision making going forward. Now, that way you have us on the inside of the tent doing whatever it is we want to do out of it, not on the outside of the tent doing whatever it is that we could do into it. And I think it would be a strength of the cabinet to actually take that approach, and not taking it, I think, as dangerous. That's not me threatening anything. It's just, you know, you're expecting a lot of people who are not necessarily as involved in the programme as we would like to be, and simply saying we'll get better briefed or whatever doesn't really cut it, to be quite honest. Let's bite the bullet on this one and have a wider involvement.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Will Simpson.
Thank you very much, Leader. I think Councillor Davis put it really well. This is about us being ambitious, about us being aspirational, and key to it is about us delivering. You know, I've seen some comments in the press about the cost of this, and I think we just need to be really clear about what it is. It's 3% of the total spend in what is going to be the biggest investment Huddersfield has ever seen and will see for a long time. But that's not just a cost in terms of, you know, getting that external expertise and capacity, because it's bringing it forward, you know, reducing the timescale considerably to us delivering, brings us years of extra spending in a regenerated town centre. As Paul said, it puts us in a position to attract millions of pounds worth of private investment into the town centre, and it protects all of our internal capacity to deliver investment and regeneration across all of Kirklees and all the towns and villages that we all care about so deeply. So for me, you know, this report's absolutely fantastic. It's a no-brainer that we support it, and like Paul, I just want to thank David Shepherd in particular, but everyone in his team as well for what they've done, and what we're all going to do, hopefully, together.
I'll bring you in a minute, Cathy, yeah? I'll try and bring you before me, so, yeah. Councillor Cooper?
On the costs, you know, I was contacted by you know who, I guess, about the cost of this, and thrown, and in many ways thrown what you might call an easy ball. You know, what do you think about these costs? And I wanted to talk about the consultation aspect of it. You know, I'm not into, if you like, going for the easy hits, if you like, on this, and that you could play that ball if you were so minded. I decided that I wanted to talk about, as regard the aspect of involvement in the decision, not the council's spending loads of money on this. I think if the money is well spent and it transforms the town centre and makes a better place, all well and good. But here we are. You know, we're in the state where it's cabinet led, when it ought to be have a wider aspect to it, and that's where I'm at.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Alison Munro. Alison, do you want to speak on this item? You mentioned it right at the beginning.
Hello, Sabrina. Thank you very much. Yes, I was very pleased to hear Peter say earlier that he's happy to increase discussions with councillors in connection with the blueprint. I think that's a move in the right direction. I'm not sure it goes far enough. However, what I'd like to know is, please can you tell me when you're going to review the blueprint? When is that going to be reviewed?
Peter, the direct question, when are you going to be reviewed?
We don't intend to review it. The blueprint is an outline of what we're going to do. What you got here, as you've had previously, is an update of how far we've got. This will be the case as everything is delivered. Things will modify and change, and reports will be forthcoming accordingly. In order to achieve and provide those reports before it, we're going to take guidance and be helped by consultants. And it's in the papers exactly how we're going to do this. They will report to this cabinet. In turn, that will be open to all, and there'll be total involvement. There is a danger, though, if we talk about consultation. You could create a Tower of Babel for everybody to have a view. What you really want is some focused opinion. I think where there's a broad agreement, we want to achieve all those things that are in the master plan. The issue is how, and how to do it within funding programmes, a time programme, and to blend in all the schemes and to make them work. Not an easy task, and over a time frame. Thus, we are involving consultants, and I think we, like you, will be much guided by what they have to say. You will not be excluded, I assure you of that. But you can't have a situation where, on policy and such like, you're trying to have a view and then a further view, and etc., etc. We will be guided by the consultants' advice, which will modify from time to time, I guess, what we might be proposing, as they adjust what is our ambition to a programme that is feasible and deliverable. And that's how it's going to be. And it will be like this. Well, most of the people here, so long as you're on the council, I would guess. In your case, it might be a bit longer.
Councillor Peter Wright. Alison, you got a supplementary, yes?
Yeah, I'd just like to, obviously, we as councillors, we need to know we're doing the right thing, and we also need to make sure we're taking the right steps in the current world that we're living in. So, just following on from that, will consultants then? So I take it you're suggesting that consultants are going to be reviewing the whole project, and if so, will their review include councillors, putting us at the heart of what they're doing? Please, can you answer that question?
We're asking the consultants' advice, not the advice of councillors on how to progress things forward. What the consultants will do will come forward at different time stages with more suggestions, which in turn will be put out more widely to include all councillors. That's the way it's going to happen.
Any more questions, Alison?
I just wanted to say, I think it was that included the town in their views and their.
Yeah, that point's been made regarding including councillors, and Peter McBride actually said that it's absolutely essential, right, yeah, to actually involve councillors. Okay, I don't have any more people putting their hands up. Cathy?
Yeah, it's just a reflection on what quite a lot of people say. I think it's more than ambitious. It just shows what this cabinet commitment is to Kirklees. And it's not just about Huddersfield, the centre of Huddersfield. Yes, people live in Huddersfield, but you get a lot of commuters, visitors, and it's a very ambitious plan. And for me, I would embrace that. 170 million to 200 million, that's absolutely fantastic. one of the things I would like to say, I'd like to commend officers because this accelerated plan, not 7 years, 5 years we're looking at, so it's even bringing it closer. We're in a pandemic and we're still investing and pushing forward. Now the whole landscape's changing within town centres, and I just think it's a fabulous thing what we're doing, and I think we want to see more of it. So well done to the officers.
Thank you, Cathy. I think before we go and approve this report, because I'm sure we're going to approve it, just a few things. We talked about ambition, and a few years ago we were talking about ambition, and we then put in an investment budget in, and last year we put the biggest ever investment plan together through this council, since the council was set up in 1974. We've also embarked on a plan to actually regenerate, refurbish and re-energise and revitalise not just Huddersfield but also Dewsbury, towns and villages. We're putting our money in them areas, and on the back of working with government we've actually managed to bring in external public sector money, and on top we've brought in inward investment from the private sector. This particular bid is very exciting, and I think Cassie mentioned it, this is not just about Huddersfield, it's about Kirklees as a total place. Many of you know, probably all of you, that Greenhead College is one of the best colleges, best sixth form colleges in the United Kingdom. And kids from far afield come to that college. And it's a state-funded college, and kids from all backgrounds who have got the ability can come there. And I know that Heckham White Grammar School, which is also an excellent school, many kids that do their GCSEs there come to Greenhead College. Mine didn't mind to say that, Heckham White Grammar, because that's also a very good school. But the point I'm making is, the reason why that is because that is the excellence of Kirklees. We get kids not just coming from Kirklees, but Halifax, Brighouse, Wakefield. And I really believe that once we get this plan up and running, we're going to get people coming from all over the place. There's a big plan that the university is developing in terms of bringing in the health quarter, where the Southgate old sports centre used to be. And that's going to be so powerful, especially on the back of the pandemic. One of the things that we've actually seen is the health inequalities, massive. Also, many of you will know that the recovery is actually getting faster than what was predicted. It's actually increasing. Everybody predicted it'll be a slump and it'll take time. But having said that, although the recovery is speeding up really quickly, there's still a big lag in the people who we are trying to make a big difference to. The education gap is increasing. We got the report there yesterday from government that kids from certain backgrounds are not getting their attainment. But all this, what we're doing, is actually contributing to their aspiration, their confidence. And if we can get the university to be the best university in the country, it's not in the Russell Group at the moment, but if we can get our university in Huddersfield, in Kirklees, to be one of the best and offering all sorts of courses, including hopefully a medical school. I've not heard any briefing from that, but that's just my aspiration. You know, we will be the best town in this country, and who knows, where that leads to. What we will also see is an offer that will be available to every single person, every single young person, every single family. There'll be stuff to do for people who actually come into work, and it'll be a time when Huddersfield will be a 24-hour biggest town in the country. And this plan is actually saying that. I don't want to focus too much on the mechanics of the stuff in terms of the cost, but somebody who's actually done this all my life, I'll tell you something, I've seen the private report, and it is good value for money. On average, a scheme like this with a full programme management office will cost you between 10 and 15% as an initial bid. As schemes go forward, that then gets inflated because unknowns come up. But this gateway process guarantees that assurance. Peter mentioned the Green Book that the Treasury use. I think this goes beyond the Green Book, because the Green Book is so full of holes that you can actually drive a bus through right here and come out with the end right here making a massive profit. And you saw that what happened in the PPE contracts. You saw billions being wasted. And I understand that the pandemic was a situation where we had to get stuff in place. But nobody scrutinised that. This bid that we've got in front of us from the consultants has been scrutinised, will be scrutinised, but will deliver as well. And if they don't deliver at the first gateway, they'll be off the job. but I'm confident that we will deliver. Also, the other thing that was mentioned about the partnership board or the cabinet or consultation, you know, to be honest with you, you know, I will talk to anybody. I will seek anybody's guidance. You know, I'll even go and speak to kids in school that have a future in the town. And if they come up with good ideas, I'll make sure them ideas are taken up. Because I'm not one for holding power. I'm not one for sort of like having a big ego. That's not my style. That's not the cabinet style. Yeah. But what we need to do is we need to make the decisions, and we'll make the right decisions. And if that means talking to whole of the council chamber, if that means engaging with local ward councillors, we'll do that, Andrew. But the key thing is, like, yeah, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. On the back of the pandemic, right, we can get something so powerful that actually puts Kirklees on the map. And I'm really excited for this. And once again, I'd like to thank all the members who have contributed today. I'd also like to thank all the officers who have been working extremely hard to accelerate this programme. We put in more capacity in the organisation, we put in more ability, more skills, and together we have to deliver this. That is what we owe, not just the people of Huddersfield, but to the people of Kirklees. The other question I just want to go on is, we've got some other plans in Dewsbury and the other towns and villages. I can assure everybody that this plan and the resource that we put in will not have any adverse impact on the deliverability of the other plans. We are still on track to deliver them. This is something that we are actually committed to, because 10 years of austerity, £200 million cut in our revenue budget. Despite that, we mean business, and I hope that we can all get behind this. Thank you very much. Are we at Will?
Can I just add one thing, Chair?
Yes, yes, you can.
I think we've got to be remarkably flexible and work with partners and opportunities. So where schemes, well, where funding programmes appear, we will be trying to target those and bring those resources to the table. Equally, we've got to match and modify our proposal in the light of what others do. So, for example, the university is a massive partner, and we want them more involved as much as they can. It's not likely we're going to have a joint venture with the university, but we've got to reflect what is happening at the university to the scale and the nature of our activities. And we're in constant discussion with them to ensure that that's so. Equally, with the NHS, whatever they're planning, because I think the NHS will change dramatically after the COVID epidemic, to want to do things, and I think particularly in centre of town, and I'm pushing them very hard to get so engaged and activated. I think at the moment all they're doing is nibbling, but I think if they think about it, it pays them. You think of the number of people who use the town centre, or would do. Like, you've got the most used bus station in West Yorkshire. That includes Leeds. And we've got the second most bus station in West Yorkshire. Obviously, Leeds is bigger, but Leeds is the second biggest in the country, outside London. So that's the scale of how big we are. So we want to make our plans around what others are doing as well, and to match them. Therefore, there's need for almost maximum flexibility. It isn't to say we've got vague, loose ideas, we don't know what we're doing or anything like that. It means we've got to be adjustable to what progresses from these alternative sources. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eric first, I've G'd you all up, and I want you to talk, because this is the biggest investment plan we're going to be delivering. So please feel free to come back in. Eric.
Thank you, Leader. You did touch on it, and I've said this before. I do applaud what's actually happening in Huddersfield. I think it's magnificent. It really is. It's going to take a lot of delivery, but it is a wonderful scheme. But I just want to point out to anyone that's actually watching this today that the small towns will not be left out. I've already asked for a briefing with officers to see exactly where we are, how the plans are coming along, and hopefully we can accelerate those too. I don't want anyone left out of what this council is doing. Its ambition is for all Kirklees, not just Huddersfield, but for Dewsbury, Batley and all the smaller towns. Let's make Kirklees a wonderful place to live as we're going forward.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Anybody else want to talk? No? Okay, and it's been a long meeting. Are we all okay to approve that? Show of hands. Thank you very much, members. We'll go on to the final item, which is item 15, strategic acquisition of property in relation to Huddersfield Blueprint Cultural Heart Project. But before we go on to that, can I just ask members if they've read the private item under item 18 to enable us to make a decision? Yes, we have. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Peter Bride.
Yeah, Chair, I propose this, that we make the acquisition, which will enhance the programme, the delivery of the programme in the Piazza area. I've seen the details of it and reliably informed that how important it will be to the total scheme. So, again, it's an opportunity which I think is reasonable to take to bring a greater degree of coherence around the whole programme.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride. Councillor Paul Davis.
Yeah, certainly like to back that up. Again, officers have applied great rigour to this when we've been briefed on the business case for this. It makes absolute sense, but wider than that, as Councillor McBride has said, there's a key strategic aim to this. So certainly, I'd second this proposal.
Thank you. We all okay? I can't see anybody putting their hands up. Oh, sorry, Councillor Munro. I remembered you wanted to ask a question on this. Over to you.
Thanks, Shabir. Yes, I'd like to know where is the evidence that supports a case for a museum in Huddersfield Town Centre? I feel it is a mistake that myself as a councillor, ward councillor, where Tilton Museum is located, haven't had been offered sight of the information that is enabling you to make a decision on this today. Thank you.
I'm sorry, girls. It's not relevant. This is the acquisition of a building. Nothing to do with Tolson Museum and what we're going to do.
Look, Councillor Munro, I don't know if you heard that, but
Yeah.
I hear your question, I hear what you're saying, but the decision that we are making today is to do with an acquisition in relation to the master plan for Huddersfield. So I hope that clarifies your question, unless you want to ask another question, a supplementary.
Can I come in on this then, please? I mean, I read the paper, and it seemed to me that it referred to a cluster of a library, a combined library and museum, and the Queensgate Market. So, could you perhaps you could tell me where I've misread? What I've misread.
Will, do you want to come in?
As the Cabinet Member for Culture, I just want to reassure you, Alison, that it doesn't relate to Tolson, and there isn't any need to worry about that with regards to this agenda item.
Okay, all right, well, thank you very much.
Hopefully that showed you.
The item's about an acquisition.
Yes, yeah. I think Councillor Munro's got that point. Councillor Cooper's got his hands up. Andrew, over to you.
When are the public going to know what the strategic acquisition is? When's that going to be made public?
I can find out, I'll tell you, but at this stage, I'm not, in the not too distant future, let's put it that way. I'm not prepared to make a statement.
The not too distant future. Now, you see, for me, that's next week.
The same person who's asking, Andrew, is asking me as well. And I said that due to commercial sensitivity, I can't tell you. But as soon as we find out, we'll let everybody know straight away. Okay, members. So are we all okay to get the council to go forward and acquire the building in question? Okay, thank you very much, members. And once again, thank you for attending. It's been a long meeting and great to see you again in person. Let's hope that we can get more councillors in this council chamber to ask questions so we can actually see them. Thank you very much. Good night and God bless.